everybody, Joseph Rothschild here, aka MBT Elestrals. That's right, we're still uploading. So for those of you that are members of the channel, first off,
give me money.
And second off, you don't know that my most recent upload was a video in which I go over the decks that have emerged from Firestorm. Unfortunately, I set the noise gate too high, and as a result, I just this. Jules did her best to try and fill in the gaps with like Bonzi Buddy, which is funny, but not like listenable. The first,
Vulcaries, champion of Hephaestus.
Totally my bad. I've cranked the volume all the way up. I'm going to be loud and annoying for the entire video today, but I'm going to give it another shot. Why am I giving it another shot? Well, I think it's kind of important that we ruminate on the format. See, there's no premier level events in July. There were a couple at the end of June, and then in August, there's a ton of events, including a store open in Atlanta that I will not be at. Terrible weekend for me. But in preparation for those huge events and also eventually the Me event, you're going to want to know what's good, and you're going to have to pull it out of your ass if you don't have anyone to test against. There will be a Poison Nectar Monthly in July that you can cut your teeth on, but I don't know how well it's going to prepare you for 4 back-to-back events if you don't have a rudimentary understanding of what's good. So today, I'm hoping to provide that, a rudimentary understanding of what's good. I'm going to be talking about 6 specific decks that I think should either be on your radar or are your pick for a premier level event. And to be clear, I'm talking about here like webcam events, store opens, etc. You really don't have to worry if you're just playing locals. And if you're specifically playing a set championship, keep in mind that the information that I'm about to give you will not apply because you can only use Firestorm cards in those events. I would urge you to check out the most recent upload on the Elestrals channel where they go over what's good in that format. But spoiler, there's pretty much only one answer. First and foremost, I want to talk about the Vulcaries decks. Now, Vulcaries Champions of Hephaestus is a good card. This shouldn't be particularly surprising to anyone. It is really strong. Moreover, its strength was understood pretty early. It came out a month early in Shattered Stars, and for that reason, people have had time to tinker with it. Additionally, it's also a deck that kind of builds itself in a Yu-Gi-Oh sort of way. You know how Yu-Gi-Oh just slaps an archetype name on something, and then you just play 3 of all those archetypal cards, and it's fine at minimum? This is kind of like that. Like, you know you need to be playing Vulcaries, you know you need to be playing some number of Hephaestus, you know you need to be playing some number of artifacts to search off the Hephaestus. For that reason, you should probably be playing Argo, and you already have the other 12 back row, so from this position, you just put in good stuff. By and large, these decks are really good, and they're really good for a number of reasons. Firstly, Vulcaries specifically is an amount of value that's really unbelievable. Even just equipping a Torch of Hestia and sculpting your draws is great. I don't think enough people have figured out the fetch land trick yet, where like after you foretell and it's really bad, you activate a card that makes you shuffle your deck like Argo so that you can get those terrible cards off the top of your deck, confound your opponent, and ensure you get better draws than you would otherwise. But min-maxing those little percentage points really goes a long way in this deck specifically. A lot of Elestrals decks are made off the back of 2-card combos, and this deck is not only full of them, it can get them really easily. Some of them are playing Smoltuga to find either Vulcaries or Kindleo. Vulcaries sets up a Kindleo by giving you a Nexus Bank, and Argo's already good in decks that are playing Kindleo. And as the metagame kind of shifts to playing big-ass guys, it's really cool to have a card in Kindleo that is a spirit-efficient way to remove them. You don't have to spend a bunch of spirits on an Earthquake player like a Shield and a Gorgons or something like that. These 2-card combos that are required to get rid of some of the stickier guys in the metagame. The one downside of this strategy is that it is a little spirit intensive. I don't think it's that big of a deal. People are tinkering with like Reforge and Ambrose setups, which is nice, but I think that it's something that pales in comparison to all of the other decks that are already spending spirits out the ass for Lycavoid. Next up is Blizzstrix. Boy, can't believe this is still playable. So despite the fact that Blizzstrix seemed dead in the water with a limit of Rise, it's actually much better than it's ever been. That's thanks to a single new card from Firestorm, New Brummelinx. New Brummelinx is unbelievable. It puts you in a position where you're constantly playing Mountains of Boreas control against opponents who obviously can't get over it. The thrust of Snowmen, if you remember that deck, is that like a guy with 8 attack is almost unbeatable in Elestrals, and you just always have one in this strategy. But you're also in a position where like you get to play Blizzard, which is also a really powerful card, especially out of the board. I think this deck is really good and critically underplayed relative to its power level. I think a lot of people viewed Josh's success as a fluke, and I want to be clear, this is a deck that should be on your radar if you want to make a deep run. You will run into it, and you should consider playing it. Next up is Bears. Bears is a really hard deck to talk about. If you're unfamiliar, it lives and dies off the back of a 2-card combo, Ursa Den and High Bear Nation, which lets you set up in one turn the requisite amount of spirits to make a copy of Majursa from deck, Champion of Hestia, which will pop the board. Darkholding and hinting for 4 is obviously unbelievable, especially in a format where so many people are making such big Elestrals that do not resist destruction, and it really helps that Ursicle can find either piece of your combo, both pieces of which are fine on their own. The problem is, at 3 Hibernation, 3 Ursicle, 1 Ursaden, 1 Majursa, It's like a 7-card package. Like, that's not a deck, right? That's like a 7-card package. Even if you put in a bunch of generically good cards, the back row suite that everyone plays, Asked Rabbits maybe because you're sort of a 2-card combo deck, you're way under the necessary amount of Elestrals to, like, enter an event. So a lot of people have tried a lot of different approaches to fill the remaining gaps in the strategy. Josh is a proponent of Werebear, which plays Werepup, and LikeyAvoid is like a 4-card lunar spirit suite. The Vulcary stuff isn't bad in it. I mean, you are in fire already, so you can go really hard into fire. There's also other Ursas that aren't bad, right? Like there's 1 or 2 that you could consider playing. The list I like the best is Cards and Coffees from the most recent premiere, where they are playing Ignector. Old Ignector lets you summon new Ignector from deck, which searches Nectar of the Gods. So you can just pay like 7 spirits and draw 6 cards turn 1. And if you're just looking for a 2-card combo that wins you the game and casts Ambrosia anyway, I mean, that's fine. You should definitely be prepared for this strategy, and if you want a combo deck to tinker with, this is it. I think people have not yet figured out the best build of this strategy, and you could be the person to crack it. While we're on more archetypal strategies, let's talk about Pigs. So Pigs is damn cool, which is going to sound weird when I compare Pigs to Tenpai. Pigs is like the Tenpai of Elestrals. The concept is you play a significant amount of Elestrals that if they win combat once, win the entire game. That's Sorlet Champion, Hydrake, and Nobby. Each of these guys, if they get over 1 guy, deals like 3 points of damage and puts a guy on field that's almost impossible for an opponent to get rid of, especially if they're down on back row. Which means that it's also the most adept deck in the room at playing exactly Hurricane. Hurricane Nobby was a classic combo in Moonrise, and this is like the obvious evolution of that strategy. Of course, there are ways to kill all of these cards, but they are not particularly efficient. Like, the best possible scenario for your opponent is you get all the way to Penterror, and then they Earthquake it. It's cost you like 3 spirits, you know, the spirit that was on the Hydrake, the spirit that was on the Twindra, and the spirit that's on the Penterror. You've probably dealt at least 3 to your opponent. Like, be reasonable. What is Penterror not getting over? If they didn't take damage, you're way up on card advantage because you've walked over like 3 Elestrals. Also, your opponent can spend 2 more spirits to go 5-3 on spirits and 1-1 in cards. Now, the reason the Penterror isn't everywhere is because previously the argument was, yes, that is a little bit of a minus from the opponent, but it prevents you from Penterroring for the rest of the game. 2 responses to that. First, now that Earthquake is limited, it prevents your opponent from Earthquaking for the rest of the game. And second, no, it doesn't, because every card in this deck is Penterror. Like, they deal with the Penterror, and you're like, okay, here comes the Chrysort, here comes the Doppelgator, good luck. Even stuff like Kindleo kind of sucks into this, right? Like, you have to hit a bank and the Kindleo, which is already a 2-card combo, and it costs you too many spirits to get to the Kindleo, and then you're sitting on a 3-attack guy against a deck that absolutely wants to win combat and can. A lot of the cards that are already good in that strategy, like Argo, fall to Hurricane, which is like the main power play of your opponent's strategy. A lot of the cards that you're playing to facilitate those cards fall to Hydrake, like, oh my god, put a 4-attack Elestral in attack position like Vulcaries, please, 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 please. I think this deck is really strong, really well positioned, and doesn't require a lot of conscious thought about like board states. It's just a sequencing deck. Would recommend for new players and for individuals on Clash, because Clash has all these cards legal. By the way, sorry for ruining Clash. Someone showed up to the stream while I was talking about Clash, and they were like, what's good in Clash? And I said Pigs. And for the next couple of days, that's all people were playing on ladder. It's a miserable experience, everyone being on Tenpai. As a conclusion to Pigs, there's a couple of weird other directions you can take this strategy. I've seen some people playing like Tornadin, because you can go like Winjin, call Sorlet, and you're playing 6 Pigs, so you have like a 50% chance to flip a Sorlet like a blind Delver. There's room to grow, even though it's just an OTK deck. Okay, with that all out of the way, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Or I guess the were elephant. LikeyAvoid. I'm going to talk about LikeyAvoid in 2 kind of disparate categories. The first one is what I'm going to call LikeyAvoid decks. It assumes a deck that doesn't exist. A hypothetical brew that aims to make LikeyAvoid. The reason this doesn't match up with reality is, theoretically, any deck can make LikeyAvoid. You just got to play Werepup, 1 LikeyAvoid, a Full Moon, and 4 Lunar Spirits in your Spirit deck. But for the purposes of argumentation, let's talk about a deck that isn't splashing LikeyAvoid, just is a LikeyAvoid strategy. A deck that's playing a lot of Lunar Elestrals and aims to resolve a Werepup. This is probably the #1 thing you want to prepare for, and I'd argue probably the best strategy in Firestorm. Not only is LikeyAvoid just an unbelievable individual Elestral, it sets you up for other, better, unbelievable Elestrals. We've seen Draking kind of take center stage because it's so easy to ascend over a card like Werepup with a water and just be like, okay, not only do I have a second big guy you have to deal with, this one can't be tsunami'd, and he eats your LikeyAvoid. You're already in Lunar, so you get to play Spectress, which checks opponents' LikeyAvoids unless they're playing around Spectress, which means your LikeyAvoid is going to outgrind their LikeyAvoid. As a result of this card existing, there's like so many Lunar Elestrals Elestrals that are now like potentially playable, like Pharaohgeist is getting experimented with once again. You're going to have to be cognizant of Lycavoid at all times, but you're also going to have to be cognizant of the cards that beat Lycavoid being played at an unbelievable rate relative to their power level. Even if you are not on Werepup, you need to be watching out for Draking. You need to be watching out for Spectrus. That bodes really poorly for casters who are shaving kind of spirit inefficient cards like Shield of Achilles that otherwise would answer Draking really well, or playing cards like Foamy that incidentally die to the answers to Lycavoid, things like Spectrus. Okay, all that out of the way, it's time to raise the curtain on what I believe to be the best deck in a post-Divine Champion Firestorm metagame. It's fives. Okay, calling it fives at this point is just a total misnomer. Like, I guess a better name for this deck would be GoodStuff. It's all the good cards in 3 or 4 different colors of spirit, including Lycavoid. This deck exists at sort of the crossroads between the LikeyAvoid strategies that would really appreciate to resolve Lycavoid and the decks that do not play it. It gets to play all these powerful cards at a really low spirit investment, and if they eat a Gorgon's Gaze, you go, fine, that's a Gorgon's Gaze I don't have to worry about. The issue with this deck at present is I don't think there's like a capital B build for it yet. Like, you probably want to be playing Viscerus, Spectrus, Werepup, Lycavoid, Champ Galaxy, but like, then what? Like, probably Astrabbit, right? Like, you imagine it would be Astrabbit, but you could also just throw Champ Vulcaries in there, 1 Hephaestus, and then play Argo. That gets you access to Kindleo, and you're already in Earth. You could play Echolinks too and do like a bad Cats build with no Solar. What if you want a little more survivability? You could jam Foamy in this shit. Foamy Galaxy is kind of difficult to get over for anyone not wielding Spectrus, and if Spectrus comes out, bam, you don't have to worry about it for your Lycavoid. You can even board into some of the other decks I talked about. Like, how hard is it for a GoodStuff deck to just jam a Draking post-board? I don't feel the same way about this deck as I felt about Fives when it was really popular. I think it is definitely beatable, and I think the game states it engineers are really interesting. We are very well past compare the attack stat on my monster, but I won't lie, it's a little frustrating to be like, well, I could just load up on 4 Tierlist to facilitate Earthquake plus Viscerus. Who's gonna stop me? In the past, I've talked about this GoodStuff strategy as like an amalgamation that will eventually cave to game plan decks, and I think we saw that happening near the end of Moonrise format, but unfortunately, Lycavoid is a game plan in a can. You can throw it in anything, and it gives you a linear play that outscales everything on this list outside of exactly Majursa. So, I don't know. So those are the decks I think you should be worried about. Probably in order: GoodStuff, decks that are attempting to use their Lycavoid answers to beat your Lycavoid, Vulcaries, Blizztrix, Bears, and Pigs. You've got a month to break that meta. Get at it.